Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, to say that this has been a challenging year would probably be the understatement of the century, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down and talk with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and just pick their brain about state of the industry, current projects, anything else under the sun. And you know, if you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, and we certainly hope that you do, please do so over at Apple, over at Spotify, and you can find all of our episodes archived over on our YouTube channel. We'd love it if you'd follow us on the social media as well. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And finally, you know what? We need you to visit us over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, our home where it all began, and with our hardworking crack team who was just talking about movies, left, right, and center, which is kind of what we love to do, and that's sort of the theme of today's show, because that's kind of who we're talking with, somebody who loves just to talk about movies, but. Before we get into that, the first someone else who loves to talk about movies are the hardworking team over at Bay Street Video, who are still open for curbside and or mailing service in the coming weeks and months as we all sit through this global health crisis. But if you really need something on DVD or Blu-ray, if there's something that you gotta have and you want to support them, they'd really love it if you did. You can check them out over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088, or you can send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD or Blu-ray needs. They ship in Canada, they ship in the States, they will do curbside by appointment. Whatever you need, they are lovely people, and you gotta shop local these days, and you gotta support the movies, and that's what we're all about, and that's what our guest today is all about, because I got the distinct pleasure to sit down with a longtime friend, Mr. Thom Ernst. He is most of you will know him from Saturday Night at the Movies, that played on TVO back in the day. He is a writer. You've seen him all across town. Right, currently you can find some of his stuff over at originalsin.ca, but he has been a long-time supporter. He has been a long-time friend. He showers a little bit too much love on me in this episode, but we'll take it, because it's always nice to hear nice things about yourself, but I digress. But we talk about movies. We talk about the industry. We talk about how things have changed in COVID, and we just let it go and flow, and we had a lot of fun doing it, and it's a nice personal talk, too, and it's, I dare say, one of our better conversations, where we have a little fun, we poke a little fun, and most importantly, we talk movies, which is something that is so sorely missed right now by, I know, a lot of you out there listening, and we may get a little pompous at times, but we are two film critics after all, so there's going to be a little bit of that, but I certainly hope you enjoy it, because I know I certainly did.
I am happy to be here. I do like your show, Dave, and I do think you're one of the more stronger and more reliable voices in cinema criticism in Toronto.
Well, you said that on the record, because it's recording, so I'm going to have to keep that for the episode.
I would have no problem with that being on the record. I would have a problem if I said something like, "You're so much better than that damn Richard Krause." Now that I've had a problem with.
Well, even Richard might agree with you on that one, so who knows?
I like Richard, and he knows it.
Yeah, and Richard's a friend of the show, so it's all good.
Oh, I know. He's really supportive of yours, and he was supportive of me too. And Saturday Night Movies sort of parted ways with me. But
I mean, obviously, just thank you for coming on. You've been a friend, you've been a mentor, quote unquote, a supporter for all these years, and it's just, I'm very happy to have you on just to talk shop and have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, good. Thank you, David.
And I mean, I guess my first question for you is, because I mean, as we're all sort of navigating the world post pandemic, and I mean not post as in it's done, but the world that we're living in now, in the middle of a pandemic. I'm just kind of marveling just at the state of the industry as a whole, because in the past there would be theatrical, there'd be video on demand, there'd be home entertainment, there'd always be these kind of tiers. Now everything is democratized and it's kind of on the same level. And I mean, my first question for you is, in your illustrious history of covering film, have you ever seen anything like this where everything is really kind of on the same playing field?
Absolutely not. And we except maybe if I would say that way back when I was a kid, before doing film reviews, and which in fact I was doing film reviews when I was 10, 11, 12. I would go to movies and I would write reviews in this little notebook and hand them off to my parents and stuff like that. But so when I thought back then, television, well, there wasn't video on demand, etc., but there was television movies. And the idea of a theatrically run movie coming on television was a big deal. It was fantastic. And we would have, so there was that, and there was made for TV movies, which was also on a different level, except when you're 10 and 11 and 12. You didn't recognize that. It was just another movie and it was available to you. I grew up on a farm, and so I had to beg if I wanted to go in town to watch a movie. So television movies were quite often what I relied on. So back then, there was more of an even playing field. I think mostly because there was only two options: TV movies and theatrical movies, and so there wasn't a whole lot of different variations. Now, until now, and you're absolutely right, video, the straight to video, video on demand, all those things, they were lesser than the ones that got released theatrically, and maybe people would argue that they weren't. I mean, HBO made the best argument because they brought out the best stuff without it being theatrically released. But when Netflix started to go make movies and have them air, I thought it's a straight to Netflix movie. It's not theatrical. And actually, quite frequently, I think that still holds. A lot of the movies I've seen that gone to Netflix.
Yeah, no, there's definitely. I mean, that goes with anything, right? I mean, you and I have seen plenty of stuff theatrically going like, oh my God, this is barely good enough for Netflix. So, I mean, you can go both ways too.
Yeah, exactly. But now, and I just finished writing a review on Monster Hunter, of which, and of which I realized I saw everything that was wrong with it. I saw this, Tony Jaa being portrayed almost as a Friday, as a savage. And I thought, okay, that's wrong. And this is wrong. And the opening lines of Mila Jovovich going, all right, ladies, let's move it. I'm going, wait a minute. Ladies is not an insult. It shouldn't be an insult. But then at the end of the review, I went, oh my God, I like this movie. What has happened to me? And I realized what has happened to me. I haven't seen that many movies this year. I haven't seen that many stellar films. So when Monster Hunter comes out, I go, Jesus, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird thing when, because I mean, for people who don't necessarily understand, I think in Toronto on a standard year we get 400 or 500 theatrical releases on top of everything else.
Yeah.
But I mean, this year I think it's, we're probably in the few dozen range for things that actually came out in a theater, if that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really one of those weird things that, Netflix is now on the same level as theatrical, and theatrical is on the same level as, renting something on Apple or watching something on Crave, and there's so much muddling of the lines. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've had to explain to that Crave is not HBO Max. They're different things.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a peculiar time, and it does seem to be an era where the playing grounds are being leveled all across the board. Financially too. Like for me, I've people say, oh God, I'm taking a real hit. I've been taking a real hit since 2013. So all of a sudden the playing field's evening out. I feel like for some of us, it's a huge loss. I'm not I'm not belittling or underplaying the role, the negative role that COVID has had. Obviously, the deaths, the
Of course,
businesses that are falling, but on other levels, it's evening a playing field, and particularly, I think, in our industry.
No, and I mean it's been a weird time because, and I mean, you and I have always joked about this, and it's one that sort of permeates our business of a lot of us having the side hustle, as it were. Like nobody really can do this full time and make a proper living. Everyone's doing multiple things, but they're doing this as well. Now seems to have been accentuated even that much more, not just because of the pandemic, but just because of the fact that in reality, if you're going to do this job and you're going to review movies at this stage, you probably have to be home more often than you do be out and about. And I think that's going to apply even once more people start getting their shots, and once populations get a little more vaccinated and we get people starting to go back to the theater slowly but surely. From our perspective, I think there's still going to be a lot of us having to work at our desks.
And I think also distributors are more familiar now with sending us films by links. Instead of having us go to the screen. And in some cases, that's going to be wonderful because it gives us a wider breadth of when we can see these things. On other occasions, maybe Monster Hunter is an example. I really don't know if that it's the only one I can think of right now, where a big screen is beneficial to the movie.
Oh, totally. No, and I mean, I don't doubt that at all. I mean, things like Monster Hunter, I mean, obviously things like Tenet, even Wonder Woman coming up would obviously have been more advantageous on the big screen. But I mean, it just makes me sort of look at, I mean, I guess the art of film criticism, because in many ways, like we have to assume we're in the theater. We have to sort of write it like we're there. And that's kind of the mindset that gets sort of bred in from day one. But now that's shifted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that fact that you used the term the art of film criticism. I don't know where people are on that debate or that discussion. I do think film criticism is an art. And I have known we've gotten to big discussions with critics. And of course, when you get a group of critics in a room, every one of them thinks they're right.
Of course.
Yeah. So there's no discussion. It's really like, no, you're wrong and this is why. And then you retort with why they're wrong and why. But yeah, it is an art. And I think not to flatter, not to use this platform to flatter you or anyone, but one of the things I like about you is and your writing, as opposed to some other critics who take the job as if they have to dissect bit by bit, moment by moment, and scene by scene, is creating a narrative around the film criticism. So it's really a unique thing. We're on a bit of a different topic now, but you said art of, and it just fascinates me. I love this discussion. To create a narrative out of a narrative, to me, is just a fascinating thing. So to recreate the experience of seeing a film, and I certainly try to do it. I think, to some success, I believe. And more so lately because I've been more focused on trying to do my reviews that way. And it's so much more fun to create a review as opposed to write a review.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that thinking. I mean, because it's one of those things where, I mean, especially just speaking personally, I hate trying to go rote and go line by line and do this or break down every little thing. Like I've got to try to sort of paint I want to paint a picture, but I don't want to paint too detailed of a picture, if that makes any kind of sense. I want to steer the ship. I don't want to tell you where you're going, kind of thing. I mean, that's my perspective on the thing.
Yeah. Or even just like ride the waves on the ship. Let's use the boating thing, because and to go with Monster Hunter as example, one of the hardest things I had about Monster. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the hardest things about Monster Hunter, and this is going to be a spoiler.
That's
So,
fine.
yeah. So the film is not really about this troop of soldiers, the Rangers.
Yeah, it's not. You're right.
It's not. It's a Robinson Crusoe movie.
Yeah.
So how do I get to the point of letting them know that we start with this crew? Because it's essential to
Yeah.
start that they start with this crew, but eventually she's left alone. How do I do that? Because and without spoiling that. I mean, I think I just gave up and just did it. Just said,
the first act of the film definitely has some sort of dramatic turns that you can't necessarily look away from.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, all that happened. Okay.
Like The Hunt.
Yeah.
If you remember The Hunt, which
yes,
I think
got
unfair. I think I got unfairly dismissed. But The Hunt, at the beginning, you just go, what the fuck is happening?
Exactly, yeah. It is pure WTF in that first 20, 30 minutes until you finally sort of settle into the groove.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did that with, I remember that's what was so amazing with that Deep Blue Sea. They did that.
Oh, totally, yes.
yeah, Deep Blue Sea, they did that. And a small movie, oh God, I forgot what it's called, but it had 3 or 4 heroes walking into this tavern. And the place was being attacked by zombies, and each hero came in and took a stand and got taken out almost as quickly as they arrived. I wish I could remember what the name of that movie was, but it actually sort of made the movie stand out as unique and different. So yeah, and sorry, Monster Hunter did that too. I thought, okay, Monster Hunter is doing a Deep Blue Sea here. At one point.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, and I mean, it's just one of those things because, I mean, especially right now, because it's the end of the year and people are kind of going award season, what do you watch? And I mean, on one end, I'm finding it impossible to sort of figure that out for people because release dates change and there's always been different stuff and everything's kind of still in flux. But also, I'm kind of in love with the fact that every single one of us in our industry is probably going to have a fairly different list.
Yeah.
When they finally get published and people do all that stuff, it's all going to look very, very different. And I mean, as weird as that sounds, like, I think that's exciting, to be perfectly honest, because it's a good, like, it's better to have more diversity than for all of us to go, well, yeah, of course, Parasite's the best movie of the year. Duh.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think, do you not think that that they're starting to seep through, still unseen, but of these movies? Because my beat sort of mostly with Original Sin has been horror films and suspense films and stuff, only because that's my preference. I can, and I will take other things on too. Because I'm Machiavellian, David. I don't know if you're aware of that. I'm quite Machiavellian. But the things that, so I'm missing out on a lot of the big ones, but the ones that are starting to get mentioned a lot now is is it Ma Rainey?
Yeah.
That one's getting mentioned about, of course, the Chadwick is being touted quite, and not just Chadwick, but oh boy, the woman.
Oh, yeah, I'm liking too. But no, yeah. But I mean, it's one of those years where, I mean, it's obviously the year the streamer is going to put their best foot forward and eventually do something, if only because there wasn't anybody else, to be perfectly frank.
Well, remember when we all thought Birds of Prey was going to be the best movie of the year?
And the Oscar goes to Bad Boys for Life. That's, thank God that didn't happen. But
Oh
yeah.
my God, yeah. You would think, yeah. You could hear the speech now after it took to the third movie for you guys to recognize how good we were. Oh, Bad Boys for Life. Good Lord. Not even the TNT could get an award in that one.
But you know what? I love how you say you're Machiavellian, because I try to do that as well. And I guess my next question for you is, because whenever I tell friends or other people I know who write, it's like, oh my God, Thom Ernst? Oh, what's he like?
Bullshit.
No, that is a fact. That is a fact.
Okay.
I want the Thom Ernst origin story. Give it to me.
Oh, geez. Well, I wrote a book, eh?
And I do know you wrote a book.
That's in the wings. So the origin story. I was oh God, this is the point now where do I just keep on? Do I go for like balls to the walls honesty here? I don't know if I'm ever sort of arrived. I think I've always sort of been along the edges, just sort of peering inside, periodically getting a lucky peek and squeezing my way through a door that someone forgot to shut too tightly, and lock behind them. I go by the graces of good people that have Risa Schumann, who opened the door for me at TV Ontario. Certainly Rudy Boutignon, who gave me a chance to do the interviews. Really what broke the wall for me was a real nagging sense of worthlessness. And in that nagging sense of worthlessness was this absolute desire to squash it, to find something that really made me feel alive. And not just made me feel alive. I'm a pleaser, right? I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of my worst qualities is I'm a pleaser. And so I will concede to anybody for anything, and so I had to do this for myself. And I wanted to show people that there was value, in what I did and what I can do. So it's quite self-serving, really. But the fact is the one constant in my life was this love of cinema.
Yeah.
And for all the reasons I think that are almost cliche, it was a huge escapism for me. I had a misspent youth, and I wasn't the only one misspending it. We'll leave that up to your. But I'm a misspent youth, and I certainly couldn't focus in school. I could only disappear in the films, and they encouraged me somehow, stories of the underdog sort of succeeding. And oddly enough, when I started to come to Toronto, and I did a few courses at university, etc., and I came to Toronto, really cool people sort of took to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. They just, like, filmmakers and artists and writers and musicians, they all kind of sort of took to me, and I was encouraged by that too. So it wasn't till I was in my late 30s I wrote my first screenplay, a short film called Rose's Time, based on a poem by a Toronto poet, Irish poet, I guess Irish Canadian, Mary Elizabeth Grace, called Rose's Time, right? And it got into Sundance Film Festival.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I went to Sundance, all like, I was dating a woman at the time who is now a prominent filmmaker. She wasn't then. And I wish to hell she would credit me for the fact that she's learned to love cinema. She wanted to be a writer, of all things, back then, and she probably would have been a very good writer, but she ended up making films. Anyway, I digress. And
go ahead.
Go ahead. So what I did is I made this film, and an opening came at TVO for a researcher. And I got the interview because of this movie.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't get the job though. The guy who got the job was ended up the week that he was to start, ended up getting a job as a researcher on a documentary about gays in Hollywood and how Hollywood what's that? It's quite well known. Anyway, so he didn't take the job. So I
Oh,
was their
Celluloid
second
Closet.
choice.
Yeah, yeah,
What's it called?
yeah. The Celluloid Closet.
Celluloid Closet, which, by the way, I don't think is as good of a documentary as people say it is, but we can talk about that later. But I'm glad they hired this guy as their researcher because he couldn't take the job at TVO, and that's when I jumped in. And because of my love of film and constantly talking about it and writing about it, and eventually CBC said me on, and that led to, Toronto Star publishing a few of my articles, and before you know it, I'm talking to Dave Voigt on In the Seats.
You're too kind, brother. You're too kind. But I mean, I think the thing I love about that story is because your story has a lot of similarities to my story. My story has a lot of similarities to other people's stories. And we all have sort of that sense of insecurity, but still passionate desire to sort of stomp on it at the same time. It's
Yeah.
a weird mix that really is only found in sort of the writing, critiquing, sort of even any kind of artistic endeavor. It's just from a personality standpoint, the boldness but the insecurity balance is so wide. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah. I even it's a weird thing for me because even when I'm feeling my most confident, my most, that I could take on the world, people will still say to me, "Oh, you're very insecure. You're very sensitive." And I go, "What the fuck? I just covered all that up. How can you possibly say that?" And it astounds me. So I've learned on some level that to embrace my insecurities, to some parts of my uncertainties and my insecurities are things I've discovered are the things about me I like the most. I like that I can be unsure. I like that I can be, sort of meet someone and be a little bit sheepish and shy, or someone I could be firm in my argument and someone would say, well, you can't be firm in your argument because butterflies are free or something, whatever. And I go, oh, perhaps they're right. Like sometimes I enjoy that element of me. But why I enjoy that is kind of a loop, because I like it when I see characters in movies who are like that. And I
Yeah.
go, oh my gosh, I'm just like, Adam Brody.
I'm Adam Brody in The Kid Detective. I'm so heartfelt with that movie. Yeah.
I love The Kid Detective.
So did I, man.
I love that
God,
movie.
that movie was fantastic.
Yeah, that's going to get one of my top 10 lists this year. And this. Why, this is the problem with talking with other people who love film, is that you can't give them any new information. But it's the guy who wrote The Dirties.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, and full disclosure, I was never a big fan of The Dirties, but
really,
I love this movie.
Yeah, and I did love The Dirties. The Dirties just blew me away. But this is also great. I love it when I can meet. This is what I do like about talking to other film people, is you can disagree on a movie and not get your nose all bent out, right? Shape.
Yeah.
Good heavens, go to a cottage and try to tell someone that Raiders of the Lost Ark is not the best movie that's ever been made. You're liable to find yourself floating in a canoe in the middle of the lake.
But, it is one of those weird things where, people outside of the business will always disagree with me. It's like, oh, I'm sorry I disagreed with you. It's like, no, I want you to disagree with me. Don't you get it? That's kind of the point. We're talking about it.
Yeah.
And one thing that you and I have always shared is just sort of a love and a passion to support the homegrown content.
Yeah,
the Canadian content, because it's important. And even something like Kid Detective, at first glance, it's not a Canadian film, but really it is a Canadian film. It's a Canadian story. And I'm just kind of curious because, this is just me sort of waxing philosophical, because this has been, this is year 12-ish for me now in sort of doing this seriously, even though I'm a lifelong fan. I've seen such a shift in sort of the Canadian way of telling stories. And I mean, this is a joke I always use. It's a little tired, but I've always felt it's accurate. Sort of how there is some kind of content, there has been content that Canadians have produced in the past that has fit that sort of that beachcombers mold, that corner gas mold, that has been a little too Canadian for its own good.
Mm-hmm.
It finally feels like we've managed to sort of shuffle that off, especially with a lot of sort of the amazingly strong filmmakers that not only have migrated and gone to Hollywood and are doing great stuff down there, but are still working regularly in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know what? I don't know how old of a man you are. You're in your 40s?
43. Yeah.
Okay. So you're out of the demographic that I'm speaking about, but I think we can credit the era of filmmakers that began in the 70s in Canada. So I think we can credit, of course, David Cronenberg for breaking the ice on that. Prior to that, Norman Jewison, who nobody ever thinks of as Canadian, and he certainly went to the States to make his films, but he lived here. And he made sure that Canada's film industry had reasons or had to step up with the center and stuff like that, the Norman Jewison Film Center, Canadian Film Center. But your question, let me focus on that.
We have to put Denny Arcand on that list too, I'd say. He's definitely
Denny Arcand, yes, yeah. Yves Montand. No, not Yves Montand.
No, you're right, not Yves Montand. But no, but yeah, Denny Arcand for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking of somebody else, and he's good too. So add him, but it's not Yves Montand. But yeah, I mean, certainly, yes. I think what's happened. I mean, two things happened, right? So we started to change Toronto into New York City, and so you can look at Police Academy and say, popular movie that was filmed in Toronto, and you go, what? But then but then that's different than something like The Silent Partner.
Yeah.
Daryl Duke's film, written by Curtis Hanson. That movie is fantastic and it really holds up. I would also say, except for some sort of sexual politics that aren't quite in tune with today's time, the original Black Christmas is another one.
Yeah,
really.
No, you're right.
I held
Bob
up.
Clark, yeah.
So yes, there is something, and it's becoming more and more present. Nobody actually, I don't hear it anyway. People say, "Well, it's a Canadian film," which I used to hear all the time as a kid.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now it could be the people I hang out with, but I just don't hear it anymore. Now I'm thinking of, sort of we don't really have an identity as Canadian cinema. Excuse me, as like say Quebec does. Like Quebec has a very distinct voice and a very distinct appeal, and I know what I'm going to get if I see a Quebecois film, just like I know kind of what I'm going to get if I see a Bergman film from I just there's a dialogue and there's a template that speaks to it.
But I mean, you could also say that with guys like Cronenberg, even guys like Goyen now. Like I think Canada has finally gotten to the point where we're comfortable with the fact that we have auteurs that are telling their own stories, and they're not quote unquote necessarily Canadian. They're Canadian because they're Canadian. They're not trying to be Canadian.
Well, even Dick Cronenberg's Hollywood movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Was very Canadian.
It was.
In the way it dealt with things and the setup. I remember the scene in that movie where Julianne Moore is sitting in a cafe or bar, just as her insecurities are starting to really build up. And it's staged the way only Cronenberg would. He's taken Hollywood and made it into fake walls and closed in areas.
Yeah.
And it's not the open sunny breeze of California. It's very confining.
Yeah.
And it might as well have snowed, in that scene. I know that film got mixed reviews, but I kind of loved it. And for that reason, Yeah, I think there's a lot of that going on now, and there's no apologies for being Canadian anymore, which is great. Um, and even in smaller like horror films, I just saw one last night um, where the license plate I noticed was Manitoba, and I went, in my mind is this is a teenage horror film. Are you not going to try to cover that up that you're from Manitoba? But no, off they went on their camping trip, and sure enough, along came a grizzly bear.
Well, and I mean that's something else I love that you're bringing up because I know we're both fans of festivals like Blood in the Snow and
Oh.
Fantasia, and I mean Canada has seemingly brought up its own little cottage industry of genre and of horror that doesn't. I mean, it quietly does a lot of business
Mm-hmm.
internationally, but it never seems to quite get the respect that it deserves these days.
Yeah, I think that's going to change. As time moves on, I do think that. I mean, Did you see the Lodge?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And see, now the Lodge is not for a. Yeah, I think you have to be a true lover of genre films to really like the Lodge because it's more along the lines of The Uninvited, the what's that famous one with Deborah Carey and The Innocents.
The Innocents, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And things like that. So, but yeah, I think there is really intelligent genre films coming along. There's one movie that came out recently it came out just this year that I don't think anybody saw it, called Girl. There was no character names in it. Mickey Rourke was in it.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a wonderful piece of Canadian cinema. There's another one too. Oh my God. About this woman, and I can't remember the title, but damn, it was good. And she comes home and there's a guy tied up in her kitchen. And the guy
For the sake of vicious.
You got it.
Yep.
What a great movie.
Oh yeah.
I think Avi Federgreen might have had something to do with that.
Yeah, and it's one of those films that it's it's 80 minutes of brutality made for no money.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that is so visually sort of assaulting and different that audiences will buy into it everywhere because it's such a unique experience that I don't think we've seen since like the mid 70s trashy, maniac level kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, it was kind of The Raid, except with only
Yeah, it was the Raid in a 700 square foot house, basically.
Yes. Yes. Was that a Gareth Stewart movie, The Raid?
Gareth Evans.
Ed Evans, right. Gareth Stewart, I don't know who that is. Interesting. Yeah, but these are the kind of things where low budget films can try too much and fall flat. Well, this one was low budget and tried for a lot and it worked. So I don't know what the magic equation is and things like this.
But it tried within its, it wasn't trying to do more than what it was supposed to. It wasn't trying to sort of build out something that they knew it couldn't afford. It was if we were going to get some sort of intense fight sequence, it was going to happen in a 3x6 foot room with a bunch of appliances and people not moving everywhere with a lot of close-ups, and just it wasn't going to be sort of this elaborately staged sort of big high action drama. It was going to be intense and kind of in your face, and it was smart on them to do that. Because if they tried to pull it out, it might have looked cheaper and maybe not as effective.
And I think a lot had to do with the three central characters and their reactions to all of these, which is a good director who sort of focuses on that. And the other thing that just occurred to me is that weren't all the attackers wearing bicycle helmets, full motorcycle helmets?
Yes, they were. Yeah.
So it was probably the same dude over and over and over again. And we just thought it was thousands.
Got to give a shout out to Gabriel Carrere and Rhys Evesham, who did direct that film, and a fantastic one. And congratulations to them once again.
Are you going to hashtag this so that they listen to this and listen to our praise? Because that movie was great. Will it even get sort of recognized at the Canadian Film Awards?
No, it won't. No, I mean, that's
ridiculous.
Unfortunate. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could think of a movie. oh geez, why do I keep on coming up with these movies that the titles like just that I'm not going to appear to you right now. Um, uh, Burke Hayes or something like that. And where this white dude, a Vietnam, it's a brilliant movie. A Vietnam veteran returns and he's all messed up.
Yeah.
And he plays poker with a bunch of African Americans or black dudes.
Yeah.
And he not only takes all their money, but he uses a really unfortunate word.
Enough said.
But he does it. He does it because he is on a suicidal mission.
Right.
And that's the only reason he does it. And somehow I think, yep, if you're going to be on a suicidal mission, that's a sure way to do it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't used like, oh, this guy is funny. Oh, this guy is risque. Oh, he's dangerous. You see that even in the 70s when this film was made. You see that and you go, good Lord, man, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I think French Connection also is problematic as you're watching the film because Popeye Doyle is doing all these things. He is homophobic. He's racist. He's this until that final scene. And you go, holy shit, Popeye Doyle's an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where especially in the 70s, it gave us such a weird dichotomy of characters who you're not supposed to like, but like, and then characters like for something like Dog Day Afternoon. I mean, even though he's, Al Pacino's robbing a bank, he's doing it in such a forward thinking sort of altruistic reason that you like him. You know what I mean? It's one of those, it's
that is on my list of flawless films.
Yeah. I mean, it produced that era produced so many films of sort of the hero versus the anti-hero, which I love going back and visiting because it's at least from my perspective, it's the pinnacle of filmmaking because there's so many fantastic stories that came out of that era. That
isn't it like the guys who got coming out of that, Friedkin and all the such powerful filmic Scorsese and it's weird when you listen to people, younger people. Oh yeah, I'm an old fogey. But younger people talk about how De Niro he phones in his roles, and I'm going, oh Jesus, if only you saw Mean Street, if only you knew the De Niro I knew,
No, it's yeah. I mean, especially given the current political situation in the States, and just especially at the beginning of Trump's term, and so many people were sort of referencing Nixon and sort of all the president's men, and it's like. And then we see newer shows come out now that kind of try to capture some things, and it's like it's not the same. It's one of those things where, at least in the 70s, it felt like even if it was something like All the President's Men, which wasn't that far removed from Watergate, it was still far removed enough to have a little bit of perspective to it, to be able to make it feel more genuine as opposed to just trying to create something trashy and exploitive.
Yeah. Well, Bob Woodward was nowhere near as good looking as Robert Redford. So.
That's a sad reality in our profession. There are no male models who are going to film screenings, but that's another discussion for another day, I suppose.
One. I don't know. I think I'm kind of male model-ish, aren't I? Or have that time that
you're not
even going to joke with me on that one.
You are a beautiful man, and so am I.
Yes, you are, Dave. It's funny when you were talking about about how your journey was similar to mine, and I got a little sad because I really don't want you to feel insecure. I really don't want that for you. I think I honestly, I just admire what you've done. It is not easy to pull together what you I know I tried. And I had the backing of TVO. I had 15 years of Saturday Night at the Movies, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You did it.
But I mean, again, it's I mean, a lot of it's right place, right time, having the right friends, knowing the right people. I mean, I mean, and I look at like, because I mean, I'll get people emailing me and people ask, "Oh, how do I do that? Oh, I'd love to write about movies, blah blah blah." And it's like everything always for me boils down to like two things: be nice and don't give up. Like,
That's
don't stop.
great. A lot of people leave out the first one. There
Yeah,
is, no, come on, there is a lot of people in our industry who leave out the be nice part.
yeah.
And it's one thing. Um,
I
you know,
mean, I can not be nice, but I mean, for the most part, I do make an effort to try to be nice because that's just the better way to be as a human being. You know what I mean?
well, you seem naturally. It seems natural to you. You don't seem to have to work at it. Um, and I try not. I don't either. I actually try to. I try to sort of develop a harder edge. It's just not going to happen with me. I just don't have it. Um, sort of try to use a harder edge or take on a harder stance or be a little bit sterner, it comes off all wrong.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work for me. But no, and it's not just because you're a nice guy and not just because you've succeeded where you're doing. It's like I genuinely look forward to seeing you. I genuinely look forward to reading your work. And I genuinely look forward to discussing things with you. And so for that reason alone, I really hope that whatever attempts you have to squash that monster that talks you down, if in fact it's really that, I hope you win, because that monster has no backing whatsoever.
Oh, and 99 times out of 100, I do fairly easily. And even that one time that I don't, it doesn't last that long. You know what I mean? It's just,
Right.
it's one of those, I think it's one of those things, like, especially in this sort of realm where we are putting, not necessarily, I mean, we're putting our voice forward, we're putting our face forward, and we're putting our opinion forward. And the last respite of a lot of people sort of on the other side of that is just to put those people down. And I refuse to sort of, I mean, sometimes it'll get to me, but for the most part, it doesn't, because I know I'm stronger than that. You know what I mean?
Good for you.
But
Excellent.
I can't say that it's not there. It
Right.
is there. It will always be there. But I know enough and am self-aware enough to be able to put it down fairly quickly.
So, how do you, without mentioning names, the perception of others who may not necessarily follow by that rule, do you think that they are guarded in their own way? Do you think that they feel the same thing we are feeling, except that they manipulate differently?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's enough people that we both know who I would say have similar sort of thought processes like you and I do, but then there would be others who probably don't, and perhaps play it a bit more maliciously, if that's the right word.
Right. And does this industry reward the malicious?
Yes, but I don't think, but in the short term.
Okay.
Again, it's, for me, I've got to look at it in terms of, like, I'm in the door, I'm working. I wish I was getting paid more, if at all, but that's another story entirely. But I'm doing something that I love, and I have a fair amount of respect from a good portion of people who I would consider professional peers across the industry. Do I have it all? No. Will I ever? No. But I can live with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there we go. There's the art of film criticism. It is an art, and it's far more an art than a business. And it is so fulfilling. And sometimes we can walk away and say, guys, it's just a movie. And sometimes you can walk away and say, this is life-changing.
Yeah, exactly.
And what always I find remarkable about cinema is that I can see a movie, even within my own family. I
Okay.
showed my wife and daughter Cabaret the other day, which
Oh,
to me is a powerful film.
yeah.
Both of them were left, and I'm going, Cabaret is not an movie, it's just not. But the thrills and the peaks and the valleys that I experience watching something like any Bob Fosse movie, to be, honest, the fact that not everybody goes along that exact same ride is really fascinating.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
like I just can't. I can't wonder. You know what you mentioned? Oh, there we go. My
No, you're
headphones
still
fell
there.
out
Yeah.
of my mic. Yep. You mentioned a movie that I thought was one of my. I called one of my flawless films. Do you remember what it was? I know.
Oh, Dog Day.
Dog Day Afternoon. The other ones, like Cabaret, Dog Day Afternoon, and the Wonder Boys.
Yeah.
These are all movies that when I watch and I go, every beat speaks to me personally on some level. So why is it not speaking to you? Why is it not speaking to this person or that person? What is it about this moment that you missed or that I'm getting? And I think that is the art of film criticism, is to express the personal experience of those moments.
No, totally. And I mean, like, a lot of it does come down to just, especially for our passionate ilk, as it were, because we were fans first and we want to experience sort of as much as we can. And I mean, I got to go back to Bob Fosse because I mean, you mentioned Cabaret. I got to finally see Sweet Charity a few days ago. And I was watching it with one other person, and I mean, they loved it just because I mean, it's a great movie, but I think I loved it because I could see what was coming as opposed to just sort of the entertainment in the moment. I could
Right.
watch it and go, damn, this guy's a fucking genius because
The
all this just happened, you know?
Rich Man Frog. The Rich Man Frog is one of the best end sequences ever
Yeah.
put to film, other than the Nicholas brothers, who there's never been anything to top them. But the Rich Man Frog from Sweet Charity is brilliant. Now, I recommend, if you haven't already, check out a film called My Sister Eileen. And Bob Fosse plays a kind of a newspaper con man. And Dick York, I think it's Dick York, plays a soda jerk, and they're both in love with psycho girl, Janet Leigh.
Right. Okay.
And they do a back alley dance off. Bob Fosse and whoever else this character is, whether it's Dick Sargent, Dick York, I don't know. It's not Dick York, but somebody. And it is brilliant. And that is, see, so Bob Fosse was in like My Sister Kate. Not My Sister Kate. Kiss Me Kate.
That's right.
And and My Sister Eileen and all these things. He was a choreographer, and then he would show up in his own films before he became a director. And watching those early movies, talk about knowing what's to come. They're just tremendous. And I do recommend My Sister Eileen.
No, I will check that out. And I mean, I love sort of, I mean, I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but I mean, like, I mean, I even think of something like Nick Cassavetes in The Fury, which is such a trashy little horror movie. But then there is the polar opposite of that, giving us something like Husbands, or, you know, some of these like wrought, heartbreaking movies. And it's really interesting to see sort of the full spectrum of what some of these real artists can do on the screen.
Well, I rewatched The Fury just to see the psychiatrist bleed out on the glass tabletop. But you know what? The Fury, Kirk Douglas and Andrew Stevens.
It's
Amy
not
Irving.
peak. It's not peak De Palma, but it's fun.
It's not. It is the answer to The Omen. And it is the sleaze answer to The Omen.
Yeah, I like that.
Do you know what? I like sleaze films like that. I like there's another movie called Apocalypse 2000. I think Kirk Douglas is in that too. And I watch that every time it comes on because somebody gets their head chopped off with a helicopter blade. These are things I live for. Okay, so at TVO, the producer of Steve Pagan's show came in, and he's a real film guy too. And he came into the Saturday Night of the Movie little office area and say, okay, name the movie that if you see that it's on at 2:00 in the morning, you're going to stay up and watch. And he mentioned Ingmar Bergman, I don't know, something or other. And I went, oh, Apocalypse 2000. And he went, what? But the thing is what I'm not going to watch a really great movie at 2:00 in the morning because I'm going to fall asleep. I'm going to watch a really bad movie at 2:00 in the morning because I'm going to be just like weary enough to think it's just hilarious.
Well, and it's one of those things that people always mistake or don't understand. Like, you and I can debate Lumet, Bergman, Scorsese till we're blue in the face, but we will embrace our trash with glee. I've got a recent answer to yours, because the Hurricane Heist from a few years ago, the Rob Cohen movie.
Yeah, it
is pure nonsense, but I absolutely love it.
It's so funny. I haven't seen this, and the reason it's in my brain, and I will now. I'm going to watch it tonight because you just said that. But in one of the Toronto Film Critic Association meetings that we're sitting at a board table, and all these guys are talking about Hurricane Heist, and I couldn't understand if they were really liking it or if they were making fun. And there were the group of people that I don't dare chime in with, oh, that sounds good, or for example, they all were like peeing their pants over the first John
Wick.
Yeah, thank you. And I thought, well, I like that movie, but are they kidding? Or are they not kidding? And these are the elite intellectual. These are the guys that teach at universities and stuff like that. And I don't know. I go, well, geez, do I admit that I like that and be part of the team, or are they just going to go, Ernst, we're kidding, that movie sucks? So I don't know what they think of Hurricane Heist, but they were talking about it a lot.
Well, I will say on the record that I unabashedly love it. So anyone wants to challenge me on that, you're welcome to come on this show.
Well, I'm going to watch it and then I'll let you know in an email.
No, for sure. And I guess maybe just to put a bow on this, because we've been talking for a bit, I'm kind of curious from your perspective, because a lot of what we do has been devalued just by the media landscape, from papers closing, people losing their jobs, to even things like Rotten Tomatoes and people going, oh, well, if it doesn't have over a 90, I'm not going to go see it. How do you think our job evolves going forward? Because I've always tried to sort of, at least from a personal standpoint, just go by the edict. If you like it, it's good, and then tell people why, and sort of embrace that, as opposed to trying to fit sort of what is expected of you, and just let the audience sort of find you, as opposed to trying to write to an audience, if that makes any sense.
It makes absolute sense. And I think I too find myself in that dilemma periodically. There's nothing worse than that moment of watching a film going, I wonder what other people think, and I have been, I have been caught in a situation where I go, am I liking this? I don't know if I'm liking this. Let me wait to see what other people think before I decide if I like it or not. And that doesn't speak well of my craft. But the way I found around that, because it's dishonest to do that, and to be talked out of your first raw emotion, is to come full circle, which is why it's great that you're putting a bow on this now, because we're coming full circle to near the beginning of the conversation, where what you do is you don't write about the film as much as you write about the experience of watching the film. See, I wrote in Monster Hunter, I don't think this movie is going to get a lot of love, but
Yeah.
This worked, this worked, this worked, and damn if this didn't work. Even though it's a little scary about maybe pushing against some raw racial issues that I feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable with, and but just the experience. And I tried a blog for a while that I called So I Saw This Movie,
Yeah.
and that was the name of the blog. And then I would just talking about this movie to a buddy or something, like Halloween, which was the first one I wrote on, which I love, the remake of, not the remake, the most recent Halloween, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
So I think the way around that is to write, to make the criticism an art, to make the critique a story, and to find the thread. And I don't think there's any wasted space if you can use humor
Yeah. No,
as
for
part of
sure.
it. Now, of course, humor sort of falls by the wayside if you're going to talk about and you love a movie that deals with abuse or
Yes.
something
Yeah.
very heavy. It's not appropriate to bring humor in there. But then you talk about something else. But you find the thread. You find what makes this movie personal to you, and do that with every movie. Do that with the movies you love. Do that with
Mm.
the movies you hate. If you hate it, why, on the personal level, does this really rub you the wrong way? If you love it, find the personal level that makes you feel elated by the film.
Yeah. And I mean, it's such good advice for anyone to end on, because I mean, and this is part of just our inherent nature. I mean, especially after we may all go see a press screening or something, we all want to talk about it afterwards because it's our nature to sort of combat and go at it. But while it's important to own the story that you want to tell about this movie, as opposed to trying to let it be shaped. And I mean, I think sort of just owning what you do and sort of taking pride in it is really such a important thing for anyone sort of in any walk of life, just to be able to find real sort of inner peace and happiness with anything, because you just have to, at the end of the day. And I mean, this is, you'll laugh, but this is one of my favorite lines from my favorite movie, from The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension: no matter where you go, there you are. And
Yeah.
that's just one of those things that I've tried to live my life by. And I get the sense you try to do that too. And I just want to say thank you again for coming on. And I hope I did not bore the hell out of you, because I had a
Oh
lot
my
of fun.
God. First of all, there is nothing I love to do more than talk. B, you are a delight. And I mean, I don't have to tell you this. I do not have to grease your ego. Ugh, that almost sounded gross. But anyway, I do not have to stroke your ego. That even is worse. Um, Regardless, what I'm trying to say is,
Tom is a dear friend, everyone. It's fine.
you know what I think of you, and I have never ever held back on my admiration for you, David.
Well, thanks, boss, and thanks for the time today.
Thank you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.